On June 3rd of 2007, Gordon Knutson would go visit his daughter, Anita Knutson's apartment to check on her after she missed work and failed to answer several of her phone calls. With the help of the apartment manager, Laura Knapp, Gordon would gain access to Anita's apartment. Upon entering her apartment, they would unfortunately discover Anita deceased. It would be discovered that Anita had been stabbed twice in the chest. Investigators also found that the corner of a window screen inside of where Anita had been found had been cut with a knife. All the evidence pointed to the murderer having access to the home, along with the fact that the murder was not motivated by death. At the time of the murder, Anita was living with a roommate named Nichole Rice. Investigators considered Nichole a person of interest in Anita's murder, but they just did not have enough evidence to charge her. Anita's murder would remain cold until 2022 when an episode of Cold Justice centered around her death would air. Illinois investigators believe that with the assistance from Cold Justice, they would finally have enough evidence to make an arrest. Nichole Rice would be arrested in connection to Anita's murder. Nichole would plead not guilty and her trial would begin. Her mom, Sharon, would state that Anita was scared of Nichole so much that she would have her father install a lock on her bedroom to protect her privacy. Gordon Knutson would then testify about discovering his daughter's body in her apartment. The initial officer at Anita's crime scene would then testify that Anita was cold to the touch, indicating that she had been deceased for some time. This officer would also state that his lieutenant instructed him to hand over the scene to another officer. Sergeant David Goodman would then testify about the scene. He would state that Anita's body was found face down near the foot of the bed with blood in the middle of the back of her robe. He would then state that she was found with 2 stab wounds, one in the right side of her chest and another in the middle of her sternum. Goodman would then testify that the reason why he believed that a robbery was not the motive was because Anita's purse was found with cash still inside. Anita's room also showed no signs of a struggle. When Nichole was brought back to the apartment by investigators just to see if anything was simply out of the ordinary, Nichole was quick to state that her iPod was missing. Goodman would state that Nichole was always considered a person of interest, along with the fact that he was suspicious of her demeanor and her contradicting statements that she would give. Detective Robert Bernard, who was there at the scene the night of Anita's murder, would testify talking to Gordon Knutson and the maintenance man before contacting Nichole Rice for question. Detective Bernard would testify that when Nichole arrived at the apartment and was informed about Anita's death, her reaction was unusually flat, lacking any kind of emotion people tend to have once given this type of information. Bernard would testify that Nichole being more worried about her iPod than Anita's death struck him as particular. He would ask Nichole to come to the station for further questioning. Bernard would also talk about the other potential suspects they did have, but they were eventually ruled out. This included Devon Hall, who he admitted to being the most likely the suspect until he was ruled out based on his location. A forensic pathologist, Dr. Marianne Sens, who performed the autopsy on Anita, would testify. She determined that the cause of death was that Anita had bled to death from her stab wound. One of the 2 stab wounds would sever Anita's heart by cutting it open and allowing blood to run out. Dr. Mary would deem Anita's death a homicide. Anita's case would then be reassigned and reopened in 2019 for further investigation. Matthew J. Henson, Nichole's old supervisor at a Menoit call center in 2007, would take the stand to testify. Henson would testify that Nichole would talk about her ongoing issues with her roommate with him. He would testify that Nichole would state that on some instances she was locked out of the house, the microwave, and how Nichole felt stuck due to the lease. Henson noted that on June 4th, the day that Anita was discovered, Nichole appeared to be less social and more hurried than usual. Later that same day, the police would call the workplace to request Nichole return to her apartment. When Hansen relayed the message, Nichole dismissed the police's request and refused to go. Nichole would even refer to Anita as a crackhead. Another co-worker from the call center would testify named Donna. She would state that Nichole would express to her as well her issues with Anita frequently. Donna stated that Nichole had a lot of anger towards Anita, especially when it came to household disputes. Donna stated that Anita even allegedly killed Nichole's fish one time by turning off the fish tank. Donna testified in court that Nichole expressed to her that the police told her that she was a suspect, but she believed everything would be okay as long as she kept her mouth shut. Donna also expressed that some of the comments that Nichole would make would unsettle her. One comment in particular that Donna found disturbing was that Nichole had stated to her, why would she have to cut the screen in order to gain access to Anita's room when she had the key? Donna would state that another unsettling comment was that when Nichole had stated, you don't want to make me angry. A woman named April, who was a mutual friend of Anita and Nichole, would state that after hearing about Anita's death, she would go to a friend's house. At the same house, Nichole would eventually show up after talking to the police. Abel expressed that she felt like Nichole was more concerned about her iPod than mourning Anita's death. A close friend of Anita, Michelle Moore, would testify about their friendship and the last time that she saw Anita. She would also state that she went to Anita's funeral and noticed that Nichole was more concerned about being blamed for Anita's death than mourning her death. Michelle stated that even though Nichole was acting this way, she didn't believe that she was capable of committing said act. An ex-boyfriend of Nichole, William May, would testify that one day, very drunk at a party in 2008, Nichole would testify to murdering Anita. But once sober, he stated that Nichole stated that she didn't remember making said confession. After hearing Nichole's alleged confession, William stated that he did contact the police. Christina Holler, a friend who met Nichole at a party in 2008, testified that due to it being the anniversary of Anita's death, Nichole was upset that she was being bullied. At the party, Nichole would admit to her that Anita and her had gotten into a fight and she stabbed her. The defense would call a criminal investigation expert named Doug Counts to the stand. Counts began his investigation into Anita's death in June of 2023. He said during his investigation, he did in fact find that Nichole did give inconsistent statements to investigators, but he didn't deem them significant enough to implicate her. He states that investigators also do not have concrete evidence that tie her to Anita's murder, along with expressing his skepticism of her confessions due to their lack of context, and he emphasized that confessions from a drunk person shouldn't hold much weight. Counts would also bring up the interrogation technique that the police used in order to interrogate Nichole, stating that this technique is known to lead suspects to inadvertently confess to their guilt through subjective questions. He stated that during Nichole's interview, he noticed that some of Nichole's answers suggested that she just might not be guilty of this crime. The prosecution would call Sergeant Carmen Ashman to testify. Sergeant Ashman testified that the Monette Police Department took several steps to confirm Devin Hall's version of events. He stated that investigators would check the records of the Amtrak train and interviewed friends and family in order to corroborate Hall's alibi. Sergeant Ashman would bring up Nichole's statements during her interview with Detective Bernard on June 4, 2007, where Nichole would claim that at the time of the murder, she was at her family's farm. Sergeant Ashman would testify that in Nichole's interview to Doug Nowes, she stated that the reason why her and Anita had limited contact was due to their schedules not aligning. Never once in this interview did she indicate that there was ever tension between her and Anita. In one interview, she said that she never saw Anita the day that she died, and then in another interview later on, she would switch it up to say she did in fact see Anita that night. She saw Anita in the kitchen while she was discussing packing for the weekend. Nichole also stated that she heard a male voice that she did recognize as a male friend of Anita's coming from the kitchen as well that night. Sergeant Ashman would say that throughout any interview Nichole had, she would describe Anita as her best friend, and any conflict that the girls did share, Nichole would chalk up to typical roommate disagreements. This would be countered with text message exchange from April 21st of 2007, which involved an argument over an alarm clock. Sergeant Ashman testified that because the alarm clock was the only issue reported to police between the two, it showed the lack of overall harmony in their living space. Investigators would continue to find inconsistencies in Nichole's story, such as her forgetting to tell investigators that she visited her aunt's house that weekend, along with her varied versions of that weekend's activities. Nichole's aunt Brenda Glens would testify. She would state that Nichole had told her that someone cut the screen at the apartment, hid in the closet, and waited for Anita. Nichole would tell her aunt that Anita was SA'd and stabbed, and she would testify that Nichole told her that Anita looked so peaceful after she died, covered up in her bathrobe. She also testified that Nichole had said that there was a bowl in the bathroom sink where Anita's alleged murderer washed off the knife. Brenda stated that she didn't feel like Nichole was acting normally to Anita's death, testifying that she was more upset about her missing iPod, even stating at one point Nichole stated that Anita deserved to die. In the closing arguments, the prosecution stated that all the evidence pointed to Nichole Rice. Whether it was the several confessions that she made, the strained relationship between Anita and Nichole, or the inconsistent statements that she made throughout the years, and the fact that Nichole knew things that simply just were not made known to the public. The prosecution stated that the other people of interest were investigated and methodically ruled out. The defense states that the prosecution failed to prove that Nichole killed Anita or the fact that Nichole was even in town during Anita's death. The defense states that the prosecution was sloppy and rushed their investigation, settling on Nichole. They stated that the pressure from the public to prove the over decade-long cold case was the reasoning for why they chose Nichole. The jury would deliberate for about 5.5 hours. When they returned, they found Nichole Rice not guilty of felony murder of Anita Knutson. Nichole Rice, her lawyers, and her family burst out in emotions, and they embraced one another as the verdict was read. Due to Nichole Rice being found not guilty, Anita Knutson's murder remains unsolved, going on 18 years with no justice for Anita Knutson, along with a killer roaming free. And that is the end of today's video. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, be safe, Earthlings. Peace out.